How do we know what is best for us? We have instincts, we have education, we have guides. Yet what if our instincts, education, and guides are throwing us chaotic signals that contradict and gainsay each other? What do we do? Humans are essentially social creatures, yet there are important needs of solitude we are not all comfortable dealing with. As a result, loneliness, depression, and anxiety have become the problems of our time. Do we lack a sense of connection with the community and the natural world? That is very likely a contributing factor to the lack of social and communal cohesion. Once again, speaking with Lilek makes me think how close we all are to dealing with climate catastrophe on a daily basis. What are our needs? No, not our luxuries, our needs. Have we replaced the solid wall that separates these two clear states of relevance with fine satin sheet? Thank you, Lilek, for your time and patience. Enjoy.
The podcast from Joanna and Mike I think it's really cool, and that is what I wanted to say.
Two and a mic. Lilek, it's great to have you back. So as we kind of concluded part one, we were about to get into the nitty-gritty, the details of the earthholder mission.
Yes.
And this is, so when I first got an email from you, it was the earthholder mission. And I was like, okay, wow, what is the earthholder mission?
Well, it's interesting that you say earthholder mission, because I think I've never used that word in that context. The mission.
Sorry, I added that.
Yeah, it's interesting. Well, we are part of the earthholder community, and the earthholder community is part of the Plum village tradition. It was founded from a very, as far as I understand, in the US in 2015. I think it started from a very small retreat, and people wanted to engage more and also talk about earth justice. Let's say we talk about social climate justice. Earth justice is justice that encompasses kind of everything. It's about racial justice, social justice, and climate justice. And the earth holder is actually a bodhisattva, like a great being, which is known to hold the earth. So it exists in the Buddhist canon, and it is used as a symbol for this mission, as you say. And there are certain principles to the earthholder community, which we all feel, which we all commit to, which is earth justice, and then collaboration or cooperation with other climate justice actors. For example, we cooperate with Extinction Rebellion in Berlin. Not every earthholder community does that, but they might have other people or organizations they collaborate with. And then, of course, mindfulness practice. So we ourselves try to find new ways of practicing mindfulness with the earth and for the earth, and of course, the people and the beings on earth. And we try to also integrate that. We've talked about that already, like our activism is spiritual activism or sacred activism, as the term is now coined, apparently. And we try to be mindful of what we are doing and how we're doing it. And we also try to spread that, but not as a mission, but as an offering. You know, we, for example, offer walking meditations or sitting meditations eating meditations, and some other practices that we might talk about, or we might not. Let's see how it fits.
Yeah, I find it thoroughly interesting because so much of the Western education that I've received, when the conversation always talked about history, it talked about some of the power plays of religions and how they are very much guided towards their own empowerment, their own growth, their own enrichment. But when there are these other beliefs which are not of a Western orientation, and they always talk about the earth, other life forms, nature, these are in some ways frowned upon because we've come, but look, we have the science and we've got this and we've got that. And these people, the spiritualism and the this sort of nature embracing, tree hugging lifestyle. I mean, that doesn't represent who we are and what humanity has become. But that statement couldn't be further from the truth. Really,
that's total bullshit, because science proves all of that. Science proves that we are one. And it's not only science, it's very logical now that we know about the evolution on Earth, more or less. There's so much that we don't know. But what we kind of know is that we evolved from non-animate matter. It kind of happened. We still don't know how. All of the science in the world cannot explain how life came to be, but it did come to be. And this is what religion tried to explain. But what science explains is that we don't coexist. We inter-are with all of the other life forms. Without the atmosphere, we couldn't be alive. Without some fishes having developed the spine, we could not stand up straight. We are a product of millions and billions of years of evolution, and this is something amazing. And let's say, at least I can only talk about my tradition. It's not seen as a contradiction. Actually shows that those things, science and spirituality, go together very well when you think about things being in an ecosystem and codepending on each other. And this is also the basis for our activism, saying that, we're not only acting for the earth, but we're acting for ourselves and for each other. And because we have seen this link, we know that we must act, because we cannot exist without water, air, other species, and whatnot, Yeah,
no, absolutely. I'm completely with you. And just to give a couple of really simple examples, when recently I had to go in for physio, I was taught to breathe again. Breathing is such a fundamental part of our own well-being. But because I breathed all my life, I feel that I'm an expert. I know how to breathe. And yet, if you really want to improve some of the weaker aspects of our anatomies as we grow older, we have to pay attention to these kinds of techniques. And these techniques are inherently taught in many natural spiritual traditions.
They are. I once thought that, for example, Buddhism is a religion of the breath, because everything in meditation, for example, happens through the breath, or at least with the help of the breath. And this is also what science shows, again, that right breathing can help you with almost everything. And that it's crucial, because, of course, everyone will say, yeah, of course, if I don't breathe anymore, I will die. That's so logical. But how I breathe, and how much, how long, how deeply, this is something that we don't think about. And even the connection with our breath is one thing, but also connection with our bodies. Like I'm a telephone coach. I'm a psychologist. So I talk to people who are exhausted and who have been neglecting their bodies and their minds for years and years. And this is also a symptom in our society, that we think that we can rule over our bodies with our mind, without really accepting that we're a team and that our body is not only the vehicle, but we are entirely dependent on our bodies to function. And this is something that you really realize only when your body says, no, I'm not working with you or like you want anymore.
Yeah, and the second example I'm going to give is yoga. So for many years, I've had problems with my back. I've been to doctors. They've taken x-rays. I've been given medication. I've been told do this, this, and that. And I did all of the other scientific stages, as it were, to try to eradicate my back problem. But I never went to yoga. And I've had students, I've had friends, I've had people say to me, go do yoga. I started doing yoga, and my back is so much better. And yoga is also firmly held within some of these spiritual traditions. They originate from these traditions, I believe.
Yeah, what we've made of it is also something very Western, that it's a kind of wellness lifestyle. I mean, it's good to do it, but it's also about really connecting with your body and training your mind, and again, it is being scientifically proven that yoga is effective. I mean, like, thousands of years of yogic practice and experience have not been sufficient for Western people to say, okay, it works. They have to study it and prove it with their methods
and change it.
Yeah, of course, adapt it. It's kind of normal that things, when they migrate from culture to culture, of course, they're adapted and they kind of need to be adapted. But sometimes it's a kind of not upgrade, but downgrade.
Yeah.
Because you take something from it which is very much the soul of it, and then you only practice form without content. And one more thing, you talked about tree hugging. Even the tree hugging, or how we say now, like the Japanese concept of bathing in the forest, Waldbaden, is now proven. It is healthy because why? We have lived in forests for hundreds of thousands of years. And of course, our system responds to that. I mean, before we started cutting down all the trees to build stuff and burn them and whatever, but it comes from our evolutionary history. And this is why tree hugging is healthy.
Yeah. It really draws a picture, doesn't it, that over the centuries, perhaps since industrialization, we have perhaps, as a human race, as a species, lost our balance within the natural ecosystem that we inhabit, because we have lost our connection with the natural world. And bit by bit, the further we go from that natural world, the more difficult it is for us to understand our connection with it. And we have lost so much as a result.
Yeah, and I mean, like, we have lost the understanding that we are part of the natural world. Because, again, it starts when you say we have lost our connection with the natural world. We are part of the natural world. And this is, again, where I can mention the work that reconnects of Joanna Macy, which is it's in the title. It's a work that reconnects, because we need that reconnection. I'm not talking about, like, I also meditate on that topic. Of course, nature is horrifying, is brutal, let's say, and is dangerous in a way. We were, we try to protect ourselves, and it's kind of a natural thing, but it has taken on forms that are not healthy anymore, because we're so disconnected from even going to the forest and like breathing in the forest, that we think we are totally independent from the natural world, which leads us to this extractivism and to really finding our comfort in the material things, which is not really it doesn't really help us so much, because we see that in our society, loneliness and depression and anxiety is so it's the problems of our time. And this comes also from not having a sense of community or a sense of connection with other people, with other beings, with the natural world anymore. And this is why we desperately need that. I once read an article which was really interesting about how humankind is kind of in a state of dissociation, is kind of traumatized from a psychological point of view, and because we have been disconnected for so long, that we don't really perceive ourselves as part of all this, and that makes us unhappy.
Yeah, I completely buy into that, because the more that I have read, not necessarily about spirituality, but about the human mind, human behavior, the way we respond to things, history, our development, has always pointed to the fact that we miss things at certain stages. And the thing is, what we are missing, we're actually removing from ourselves deliberately, but at the same time without knowing. And I think you're correct. You were also very correct to correct me with my use of "with" as a preposition in the case, which was wholly unnecessary. So thank you for that. But it does bring me also to another point that we wanted to talk about in this part, which is activism, and why activists are considered to be, by certain parts or certain areas of society, as extremists. Whereas when we open our minds to understand the truth of what you are here saying, and which I'm agreeing with completely, is that defending the natural world is not an extreme position to take.
Yeah, it seems to be extreme because we're so extremely disconnected, and we're so extremely, we have shifted to the other end of the spectrum. The more technical aid, the more technical means we have, the less we are in contact with the kind of evolutionary reality. Of course, it's maybe that can be misunderstood. Everything is evolution. Like also the computer that we talk through is part of evolution, is part of our intelligence and our way of our creativity, of course. But it leads us somewhere where we are, in a way, not as happy. This is just a fact, like for now. So we seem to need this other part too. And this is extreme because it's our hubris to think that we're the best species, the most developed species, and of course, the most important species. And this hubris has led us to forget that we're, as I just said, entirely dependent on very, very basic things like the air and the water and the microbiome in our guts, for example, which we have not worked for at all. We have inherited it. It's come for free, more or less. And so this is extreme, this view of us being totally separate. And this is why people like activists, however you want to call them, who try to raise awareness and to try to say, hey, listen, this is not the way it should go, they're perceived as extremists. Because, of course, their position is very different from the mainstream position. And I think when you look from the perspective of an activist, our world is extreme. You know, I started going to the supermarket and telling myself, this is crazy. Like, look at it with a critical eye and ask yourself how many companies are producing like 5 types of butter and soy yogurt or meat or whatever, and we don't need that at all. And how many things are being thrown away? So once you start scratching the surface of our very much developed and technically evolved society, I think that's also, at least my evolution, you start becoming aware of the craziness of that and how extreme this society has become in a way. And the interesting thing is that we are still extremely human, all of us. We have the same basic needs as thousands of years ago, or maybe hundreds of thousands of years ago. This is still the same, but the way we try to get these needs met and the way we try to protect ourselves from death and suffering has become quite extreme, or can be quite extreme.
Yeah, and understanding these issues and also our own mortality is something which has become much more difficult for us. We live longer. We are greedier. We want more things. We want to see more things. We want to experience greater things. And our expectation levels have become almost unattainable in many ways, because whatever we do, it's never enough. And this is perhaps an unfortunate reality that society has to face. And, we have to take less holidays abroad. We have to fly less. We have to consume less meat. We have to use less plastic in our packaging. And all of this points to perhaps something which would be considered an inconvenience. But in fact, these temporary inconveniences are there to save us from a much greater inconvenience later on in life.
Exactly. We've talked about that too. That's again the long-term view. And again, what you consider necessary in your life. And I think, like the thing is that many people in COVID times, they have realized that those basic things like being able to go outside and meet 10 or 20 people at the same time is a luxury, can become a luxury, or just meeting your friends or visiting your family without being afraid of getting sick or infecting others. That I think that in a way brought us back. But the backlash now is that we're so happy that everything is back to normal, let's say, which is not true, but there's this wish of things becoming like being normal again, leads us maybe to going back to flying, to doing even more partying or whatever. And I know there are statistics, maybe not all of that is true, but I think we fly even more than before, although we have seen that the positive effects of not flying on the climate and the environment, And so this is also something very human, and it's in a way understandable, but it's tragic because we're destroying our future and even our present. And this is something I think that is not so extreme that we as activists want to point out, and we want to tell people, listen, we can be happy with less longer. And this is why, for example, we will do there, like some days ago, I think on the 2nd of August, we sadly had the Earth Overshoot Day, which means that the resources of the natural resources of the planet are used up in the world, and we want to raise awareness, and this is why we will sit outside in meditation and ask people, like with sandwich boards, asking the question, what do I really need to be happy, or what do I wish for our planet, our home? And so that people may be inspired to think about these questions again and again. Like, we are not dumb. We do think about those questions when we lack those things, like the those things that we lacked in the pandemic, for example, but we tend to forget. And this is why mindfulness is so important, because we need to practice. Even like activists, they need to practice to keep up their spirit and also their positivity or their love for life and humankind.
Yeah, and this is a very powerful thought as well. This principle, this basic need of love, and sharing it with others so that they may also experience it. Sometimes I feel that the more hateful people among us are actually the loneliest and the ones most in need of love. But they perhaps sometimes feel unable or unwilling to ask for it. But that's a different conversation. Lilek, thank you very much. We came very close also then to moving further into the world of psychology, which I would love to do with you because you're such a professional in the area. But then, maybe I'll have to lay out my demands and requests a bit more clearly about that.
Yes.
Yeah, but thank you very much again for your insight. Every conversation is an education, and I thoroughly appreciate it. And I look forward to the next one.
Well, I try to serve as much as I can. Otherwise, I will feed my ego. But thank you. Still, thank you for your kind words. And it was a pleasure. It went by very fast. Time flew, and I'm looking forward to talking more about those topics that are very close to my heart and to yours too, right?
Very much so. And Mike.